Angelique Coetzee is the South African doctor who first detected new symptoms in patients who had contracted COVID-19. While she says the symptoms are peculiar, cases so far have been mild.
So what is interesting is that the clinical symptoms are not the same than with Delta. Extreme tiredness and fatigue. Under young people, that was how we first detected, with a bit of a body ache and pain and headache. Very, very similar to what you will normally see with any viral infection.
South Africa has detected just over 50 cases of the new variant. And in neighboring Botswana, 19 people have been infected. There have also been cases in Belgium, Israel and other countries. Scientists say it may take up to 2 weeks to better understand the variant, to determine how easily it spreads and how well vaccines work to protect people.
How much did Ghislaine Maxwell know about Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sexual abuse of underage girls? That will be the central question in the trial of the 59-year-old British socialite facing charges of sex trafficking and other crimes. A big unknown on the trial is how far the judge will allow the prosecutors to probe into Epstein and Maxwell's high-profile social circles that included many household names from politics, industry, and entertainment. One being Britain's Prince Andrew. His accuser, Virginia Roberts, who says she was trafficked by Maxwell to the prince for sex when she was a teenager, is likely not going to be called as a witness. He denies any wrongdoing. But prosecutors are expected to call at least 4 other women, all Epstein accusers.
The EU's border agency is to dispatch a plane to monitor the shores of the English Channel for migrant activity, following the death on Wednesday of 27 people who drowned trying to cross to the United Kingdom. The commitment came after a meeting in Calais of ministers from concerned European Union nations. An invitation to the UK was withdrawn after Prime Minister Boris Johnson preempted the talks by publishing his own 5-point plan. A small group of protesters heckled the passing ministers. They believe that, on the contrary, it's the EU that should be more welcoming.
According to an EU statement, the Taliban asked for help in keeping Afghanistan's airports running in weekend talks with EU officials. Both sides sent senior officials to the Qatari capital Doha for the talks, which happened just ahead of 2 weeks of negotiations between the US and the Taliban, also to be taking place in Doha. The EU's European External Action Service, or EEAS, said in its statement that the dialogue does not imply recognition by the EU of the interim Taliban government, but is part of EU's operational engagement in the interest of the EU and the Afghan people.
Strong earthquake that measured 7.5 on the Richter scale shook the remote Amazon region of northern Peru. Tremors were also felt in the capital city of Lima. No casualties have been reported. The epicenter of the quake was 42 kilometers northwest of the coastal city of Barranca. Now, tremors left at least 75 homes destroyed in northern Peru. A 14-meter tower in the medieval church collapsed shortly after the earthquake. Videos posted online showed the historic tower, part of a 16th century complex believed to be the oldest Catholic temple in the Amazons region, reduced to a pile of stones. While the earthquake was extremely strong, it was relatively deep, measured at 131 kilometers, which usually reduces the extent of damage.
All right, let's now shift our attention to what is unfolding in Pakistan, where a mob reportedly has attacked and torched a police station in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's Charsadar district, demanding that the authorities should hand over a man who was arrested for allegedly disrespecting the Holy Quran. According to the authorities, the man was arrested for burning a copy of the Quran at a mosque. Now, as the news of this alleged incident of blasphemy picked up pace, thousands of protesters gathered in front of the Tangi Tehsil's main police station, demanding for the handover of the suspect. Riots broke out shortly afterwards as the police clashed with the protesters, and at least about one individual was said to have been injured after the police resorted to firing in the air to disperse the protesters.
What began as protests against coronavirus restrictions continue to snowball in France's overseas territories of Guadeloupe and Martinique. Vaccination requirements were just a match to the powder keg of long-standing tensions. Demonstrators are also speaking out against explosive inequality, poor public services, and perceived neglect from the French mainland. Ills some say only greater autonomy will cure. While the Overseas Territories Minister has expressed willingness to discuss greater autonomy, he insisted vaccination requirements for health workers will not be scrapped. And ahead of discussions with union delegates, Sébastien Lecornu rejected calls to free demonstrators detained for violence.